My name's Cameron Hocking. I'm an educational designer with the OPVC L&T, and I'm here to talk to you about lecture tools and to show you what it is and to give you a bit of an explanation of what we're actually doing with lecture tools here at Monash. I'm aware that morning tea is on straight after this session, and I'm going to give you the chance to get out early so you get the best of the morning tea. That's a good way to get people on site to start with, I know, so I'll be doing that. And the reason as well is because I'm sure some of you are very interested in lecture tools, but there is a kind of caveat to this that I do need to tell you about right at the start. And that is that lecture tools is only on trial here at Monash, and it's only on trial until June 2014. So the OPVC and L&T are going to be managing that trial. It's already started, and we've got a couple of academics who are using lecture tools, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right for everyone. So I'm going to show you what it does so you get a really good idea of what lecture tools is and whether it might be worth you taking part in the trial, because there is going to be a bit of work involved in getting it started and getting set up with it, and then you can make your decision. So I'll probably aim for about 15 to 20 minutes of that, and then if you decide that lecture tools is not for you, I won't take it personally if you want to get up and kind of get the inside running on the table. So what lecture tools basically is it's a presentation tool. It's just been bought by Echo 360, so if any of you use the lecture capture software, that company has bought lecture tools. It doesn't integrate at the moment with Echo 360, so it doesn't integrate with the lecture capture at the moment, but that feature has been promised. So we're looking at it as whether there's any value in actually rolling it out as an enterprise-wide solution, or even if faculties are maybe interested in it, but we want to kind of get some people in who are willing to give it a try in the next 6 months to see if it's useful, to see if you can break it, which is always an important thing. We want to know. So if you're one of those people who are really good at breaking things, we might want to get you in, because that would be good. And to really test it out in your classrooms and see what it's like. So this is lecture tools here, and I'm going to kind of jump between a couple of different views. So just so you know, there are 3 basic views in lecture tools. There is this view here, which I'm going to refer to as your dashboard. Okay, so this is the kind of back end that you will see if you are teaching with lecture tools. There's also a presentation view, which is a cleaner version of the dashboard. It doesn't have all the bits that the teacher can see. It's kind of the one that you would put up on your big screen. If you are running, say, the computer at the front, you'd have your dashboard on your computer. You would put the presentation view up on the big screen for the students to be able to look at. And there's also a student view, and that's what the students will be seeing on their computer. So the students log in, they have an account as well, and they are able to access the lectures that you are publishing through lecture tools. And I'll show you what the student view looks like in a little bit. So today we're going to have a bit of a look at some of the features and just basically some of the interactive features of lecture tools. I'm going to get you to kind of just first reactions, just to share how you might use some of these features in your class, which I think would be handy, even if you don't decide to use lecture tools, that you might hear some examples of how other people would use it. And I'll show you how the views work, and then the last bit, if you want to leave, I'll kind of answer some of the more detailed questions, and we'll talk through how you can take part in the trial and all of those kind of logistical issues that would come up. So this is our back end. Basically, lecture tools will allow you to import your PowerPoints. So if you've got a presentation, you're able to import it in. So if you've got your standard presentations, you can use those. And then what you also would do is you insert interactive slides into the middle of your presentations. So you might create your PowerPoint that has kind of your notes, and you've got pictures and kind of all of your static slides that you would use. You bring all of that in, and then interspersed between those, you would set some interactive activities that you want the students to do while they're in your class. So we would import the slides in, and then we can see there's an option there to create the interactive slides. And I'll show you what some of those interactive slides look like. You have control over whether the students can see and access your lecture. All of the lectures are indexed by date, and I'll show you how that looks. And so you control it by either publishing or unpublishing your lecture. So you get the control if you want to walk into the class and say, okay, I'm publishing the lecture now. Students will be able to access it then. If you want to publish it beforehand, you can do that. The other concern, I guess, I have with lecture tools is it's not actually great at being all that flexible if you're trying to edit on the day. If you want to kind of do it on the fly, like you can do in PowerPoint, it's a bit more difficult here. I had to add one slide to this presentation today. I wanted to put my email address on the last one. What I had to do was unpublish the lecture, go into PowerPoint, do a new presentation, do that slide, save the slide as a new presentation, go back to Lecture Tools and upload that one slide. I couldn't just kind of get in there and type in one basic bit. So that's kind of one of the drawbacks, I think, at the moment. So I'll show you just what you see as you're presenting. So this is the teacher view, the dashboard view. And in the dashboard view, we've got what we're seeing on screen. We've got some inking options, and you've got your slide controls. And if you push the dashboard up, you will also get all of this information. Now, what are you seeing straight away that's one of the issues that we've got? It takes away half of my slide. So this is kind of one of the annoying features. And if, as the trial goes ahead, we'll be keeping track of all of these annoying features and saying, can we find ways to fix this as well before we think about rolling it out. So we've got our slide previews down the bottom. In this section here, we've got student questions. So as students are working through, if they want to send you a question about a particular slide, they can either flag it, so they can kind of almost raise their hand on a question, say, I don't really understand this slide, or they can send you a question through. And this is where you would want to have your dashboard kind of on your screen, but not on the big screen, so you can get access to those student questions as you're going. You'll also, if you're on an interactive slide, you'll see details of whatever the interactivity is. So if it's a question, you'll be able to see the responses. So on the dashboard, you've got this particular section. If I was pushing this up to the big screen, I would launch the presentation, and this is what you would put on your big screen. It's a much cleaner view. And if I just reduce this for a little while, if I put these two side by side, so there's the presentation view, which would be on the big screen. As I work through on this slide, if I click, it follows on the big screen. So if I go through, if I want to do some inking, I ink on my dashboard and it inks up on the big screen at the same time. So it's kind of following what you're seeing on your dashboard. So this is the best way to go. If you're working in a lecture theatre, you probably want to plug your laptop in and you extend your screen out so you've kind of got this presenter view up on the big screen. You've got your dashboard kept separate. In terms of the types of interactive slides that you can have, you've got multiple choice. So you can set your multiple choice questions, you can set an answer to be correct, or you can leave it open. So if you wanted to start a discussion and you had 4 kind of responses and it was the student choosing the one that they thought was the closest to their opinion, that's the one way that you could do it. Or you could have your straight, this is the correct answer, the other 3 are incorrect. And when you do that, you'll be given a histogram that will show the responses of each of these. So I watched Chris Thompson use this over in science, and he was using it as a revision lecture where his students were kind of going through and answering questions, and each question had a correct and 3 incorrect answers, and it was a way for him to assess whether the students understood and were able to answer the questions. So that's a useful tool, I guess, and probably the most simple of the interactive elements there is the multiple choice. You will get the results displayed on a graph. Here's what a multiple choice question looks like. And I'll show you now. I'm actually going to jump across into the student view. So this is what I've got here, and I've got choices in my dashboard. I can choose to show the results to the students. So I might want to keep that hidden for a little while if I don't want to kind of skew their work. If I wanted to get them to all put in their response, and then I show the results to them. And I can also actually show the answers if I want to. So using these 3 buttons here, I can control whether the polls are open. So I'm going to hit that to open up the polls. And if I want to show the results or the answer on my presentation view, I can control that too. If I jump to the student view, this is what they are seeing. You'll notice that the student is still stuck on my first slide. Now, there's no option for the student to follow you as you present. Okay, they are going to have to manually click through as you are presenting. There is an option here to click for a slide update, and if I do that, it drags me through all those slides and it takes me to where the presenter, the lecturer, is at that particular time. And this is where I can enter my response, and you will notice there's a text option. So if the students register, they register their phones, they are able to text in if they don't have a computer with them. I don't know how many students are going to be wanting to use up their texts on class, but some of them are maybe on unlimited text plans, so they might be more willing to do that. This does work on mobile phone. You can get it just in a browser on a mobile phone, although it's a little bit quirky. And there is also an iPad app, and I think there's an Android app as well, so it gives a kind of similar layout to this with the iPad app. The students have a note-taking section. They can take notes on each slide as they're working, which is quite useful. They're able to also export that back out again. And you'll see here that if they need to, they are also able to flag. So they can say, this is a confusing slide, I don't really understand. And they can bookmark the slide if they want to come back to it later as well. So, someone give me an answer. What's the most important quality in an effective learner? A, B, C or D? Someone yell it out. There's no right answer here. Organised and motivated. Okay, so I'm going to say C. I'm going to submit my answer. I can change it if I want to. And if I go back and have a look at the presenter's dashboard, if I now have a look at the presentation view, and we should be able to see the results. We finish, and we get the histogram which shows that one person said it was C. Okay, so that's a kind of useful way, whether you're using it as a direct, straight answer, there's one correct answer, or there's a way of kind of opening up the discussion a little bit. If we skip through to the next type of activity, we've got one that is a follow-up question. So if you've got a multiple choice slide, you can then also add a follow-up question, which would be free text. So if I wanted to ask my students to expand upon why they actually gave a particular answer, that option is there as well. You can also do a short answer if you want to, where you can show the responses or not show the responses. The one feature that I think is missing from that, which would be really useful, is to be able to actually say, I want to highlight this response and this response and this response, but not the rest. In the same way that you might call on a student and say, Colin, what do you think about this? I might see that Colin has given a really good answer through lecture tools, and I want to be able to put that up onto the screen, and that's one of the features that I kind of suggest that they add. But there's no moderation. You only choose to either show it or not show it. So you're probably going to have to be pretty quick on looking through and seeing if it's okay to kind of put up. But I'm sure your students are all very responsible. Is that right? So that would be a short answer one where you could also text that one in, although I don't think the texting one is quite as easy as if students are working on their computers. Now we're getting to slightly more interactive and some of the more kind of interesting features. I think there's one that's called the ordered list, where you can put in a number of steps, and this only is correctly sequenced. So you say, here is a sequence, here are the steps, and the students will get a random arrangement of answers, and they have to drag and click through. So I'll show you from the student view. I'm going to go back and I'm going to click for slide updates. Okay, help me out here. So what is the correct sequence for doing the hokey pokey? Who wants to come up and have a go? You actually get to come up and click and drag. Who's confident? Who's a dancer? Someone yell out. What's the first step?
D.
D. You put your left foot in. We're sure?
Yeah.
So I just drag it. Oops. Drag. We put our left foot in. What's the next step?
B.
E?
B.
Oh, B.
No.
We take our left foot out.
Yeah.
Then what do we do?
We
We put our left foot in. We don't sing the brackets. We only. And then what?
shake it
We shake it all about. And the last step, we've actually got people doing it. We turn around. Are we happy with our response? We okay with this? All right. So we submit. It's been submitted. If I go back to the teacher view, I'm going to see what the results are. So I'm finishing. How many students got it correct? 100% got it correct. We get a little Pac-Man graph, which I always like. So that gives us an idea of, it's kind of a little bit of, I guess, a kind of more interesting way of answering. So what I might do now is stop talking for a moment, and I'd be interested in just, if you can have a think about how you might use an ordered list in one of your subjects, and then I might just grab a couple of people kind of to suggest it. So if you want to have a quick think. Who thinks that there's something kind of jumping out at you straight away where you might use an ordered list in your subject? Yes?
I teach statistics, data analysis, and so we do hypothesis testing, and we have steps, test analysis. So I would have an ordered list with steps.
And a useful way to do it, I think, because it randomises, so you can kind of reset it and see again whether it works. So anything that's kind of process-based would be really useful. Anyone else go on?
From pharmacology department, and any type of cell signaling pathway, interaction, obviously again a process, and get the students to put the pathway in the right.
Yep, I'll have to take your word for that. I don't know much about cell signaling. Yes.
Cameron, can I make a separate comment? I mean, this kind of tool and multi choice we've been using for a number of years anyway.
Yep.
But the difference is that this is students interacting electronically as opposed to getting them to answer within the class.
Yes.
Which is of interest at two levels. One is the younger generation, their communication is more electronic anyway. They text to friends rather than chat to them. Is that the direction we want to go?
I wouldn't be using it just as a way of kind of reducing all of the interaction. I think it's a way that you could actually build the interaction in a little bit more. If you're drawing on rather than one person and kind of getting their response, if you've got information that says, okay, well, in this multiple choice question where we had an open question, we had 20% of people thought that this was the best response, 18% thought this was the best response. Who actually said that? It's kind of a way of, I think, not letting students hide and kind of building on it that way. So you could use it as that open-ended response rather than the closed.
But that actually brings me to my next point, because these sort of tools are gems for large classes and lectures. But I think when you've got a class of 40 under, it's easy to engage them and get them talking and interacting and that. And therefore, you have to say, is this more what they would prefer, or, I mean, because the learning is the same.
Yes, and I guess it depends on what your class is like as well. If you've got 40 and all 40 engage and are willing to kind of, always contribute and are happy to give their opinions and they're going to talk with you, then maybe you don't want to go down this track. But maybe if you've got 40 and 20 of them are really kind of driving the conversation and the other 20 are the ones that kind of sit there and listen, at least you're getting a little bit more.
As a teacher to draw them out then.
Yeah, and I think one of the selling points here for the student is not just that they do have the chance to engage, that they see it there, but also that they've got their notes that they can add to it. But definitely I think it's anyone's role as a teacher to think about how they can make the most of the students who are actually in the class and be able to get that out of them. The large class situation is obviously the one where this really ticks some boxes. But I have seen, and it worked quite well in Chris Thompson's class, he had about 17 or 18 people I think in there. And just being able to respond to the responses that were there and then leading that down the path of, oh, well, someone made a mistake here, this maybe is why. And it would be that way of, I guess, working out the gaps that you've got or the bits that you need to go back over. The chance for someone to flag a slide privately and say, look, I really don't understand this part. I think that's quite challenging for some students. So it's nice for them to be able to do that too. So there are elements there I think that are quite useful. The next interactive slide, and I'm not really a professor, I don't know why that tab says professor, is an image quiz. So in this one you can define an image that has a correct area. And so for example in this one, it's a pretty simple one because I couldn't think of anything too complex. You could say where's the coffee cup and the students go and they click on the coffee cup. This is probably low level, this might be one maybe for your first use. Anyone think of a way to use this? Any marketing people here? I'm sure marketing people.
Where is the library?
Where is the library? So, yeah, very simple one.
In some programming code, where's the error?
Yeah, yep. Chris was using it. He had, I can't remember what it was something to do with image, there was like colour maps, where they had to identify if you did this thing, what colour would it produce, and so that the students were kind of clicking into those areas. This is, the only kind of drawback here is that you can only really define a rectangular area, so my coffee cup wasn't exactly right because I couldn't get the edges on the coffee cup, but you know, it wasn't too bad. So if I click here, I submit, we go back and have a look at the results, and we can see it's showing, and again, that might be even one where you would put up an opinion. So you could put a statement up, and the students kind of indicate where their opinion falls between the two statements. You know, if you've got an agree to disagree, they could kind of indicate along that continuum. So there's some different ways that I think you could use it. You can also add multimedia in, so it can bring in, you can embed things like YouTube, TED Talks, all that type of stuff, so that's quite easy to be able to add in straight into lecture tools. And there's our follow-up question, do you think it would be useful for you? So in terms of the management of lecture tools, just to show you what it looks like, knowing that, yeah, you've got a couple of minutes. This is the way that you run it. It doesn't actually integrate with Moodle. It's the way that you do it to invite students in. There's a couple of different ways. You can either give them a link, and so you might email your students and say, here's the link. They click on that link, they will be prompted to either sign in or sign up for lecture tools using their Monash accounts. Is the best way to go. And then you'll get details of who has actually registered for your class. So if you want to get rid of this person, he sounds like a bit of a troublemaker, you can block that person. So the link, you know, it doesn't really matter. The other way that you can do it is you can upload a CSV file. So if you've got your student files in Excel, and all you need to do is you put the email in the first column. I don't think you even need to add their first and last names, but you can as well into the second and third columns. You upload your roster that way. The students will then be added straight in, and they will see, so they'll actually get in their lecture tools version, they'll have the units that they're enrolled in, and on each of the days when you actually are running a lecture or running a tute, they'll see the dates that appear there as well. You can invite other instructors in as well, so if you want to invite them by email, you can do that. There's a little bit of work around that. We do have some resources there to help you get started. Like I said, this is a trial, so if you are interested, please feel free to send me an email there, or even just talk to me straight after this and I can kind of grab your details and I'll send you an email. So we've got some resources about how to get started, how to sign up. The one thing that I would say is if you want to sign up as a student and as an instructor, which is quite useful because you might want to see what the students are seeing, use a different email address for the student group. So if you do want to kind of test it out, don't use your Monash one for both. That gets very confusing when you do that, and that's a mistake that I made. Does anyone have any questions so far about it? Yes?
Have you seen this used with large cohorts of 200 or 300 people?
Not yet, so that's the thing. If anyone's brave enough, anyone here lecture to 200 or 300 people?
Yeah.
Was that did you just volunteer? Everyone saw him volunteer, didn't they? Good on, we can check the tape if you're willing to, because it'd be great to see how it does work with the 200 or 300. The only thing I would say, and I know when Chris Thompson did this, he said, I think for his 1 hour tute or seminar, he probably put in 3 hours work preparing because it was the first time and he wanted to learn how it worked and, you know, be confident in doing it. So that is something to consider, that there is a bit of work there. But if you are willing to test it with 200 or 300, then let me know because I'm happy to kind of come and help you get it set up.
How accessible is it? Do you need a smartphone? Do you need a laptop? Do you need a computer? Do you need an iPad?
You need something like that. I wouldn't want to be using it on a phone. I'd probably want to be accessing it through as a student, as a tablet, on a tablet or on a computer. And that's the other thing, I guess, to consider, whether your students are willing to do that.
You had the SMS option as well.
Yes, yeah. So
Students can use
they can text in their answers if they register beforehand. They need to register their phone to their account, and then they can text in A, B, C, D
And also download the lecture tools.
They can download their notes afterwards.
Just the application.
Yeah, so they download the app to their. It's all web-based if you're on your computer. There's no program for that. It's all web-based here. But if you're on an iPad or an Android device, there is an app for it, which gives similar functions. Yes?
What's the difference of this tool to metal, which was around, or maybe still is around?
It's kind of still around, and I think the limitations of this compared to metal are metal had that kind of infinite noting where you can keep writing. This is probably a bit more self-contained, and I think the bits, for the students in terms of the management of their notes and things like that, if you're using metal, you probably will actually see some limitations here. And I think there are some real limitations in terms of things like the inking, whereas metal is really good at the inking parts. So if you do a lot of inking, it's probably still not there. It's quite ugly. It doesn't really have the curves in it. You can't put text over the top. I wouldn't be drawing complex graphs in here.
But both tools are supported by Monash?
Metal is not anymore, I think. Yeah. It's in a kind of state of moving towards not being supported. It got to the end of the life cycle, but it's still available and I think you can still use it. Yes?
You mentioned email addresses, so an academic wants to use their Monash email address.
Yep.
And then if they want to test it out as a student, they can use any other email.
Yes, yeah. So you would invite yourself as you either use that link for your course, or if you wanted to just sign up as a student and invite yourself that way, upload your email address and just test it. I made the mistake of signing up as a student on Monash and then as an instructor, and every time I log in I have to choose. Better to keep it separate.
But when you say student on Monash, you don't have to have a student, Monash student in there.
No, they don't have to. But I would be I think it's best if the students do.
Yeah.
And if you see someone in your course that hasn't given their real name, just say, you're out. You need to use your real name because we're out of school. That's what we need to do. We need to know who's doing stuff. Yep.
If I use a tablet computer, can I use the electronic pen to write on the slides?
You can. The only thing it's not doing at the moment is letting you project. You wouldn't be able to get your computer to show the screen and walk around with a tablet and ink at the same time. Some tools are starting to do that, where you can kind of mirror your tablet to the front. That would be the next step, I think, that would be really useful. If I could, walk around with a tablet, flick through my slides, ink when I wanted to, and it's all kind of reflected back through the computer onto the screen, that would be fantastic. I imagine that will be built in one day, but, you can never rely on these things, can you? Okay. 2 minutes. Rush. If you want to hang around, feel free to, and I can send you an email with details of how to sign up. Thank you. Thanks for coming.